All right, so hopefully Sadia and them are going to join at some point. All right. All right, I think we're live here. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug, as always. So I'm glad that you've chosen to join us for our Sabbath evening study tonight. So anyway, so hopefully you guys are going to enjoy this. And as we've been doing, we're going to be going into Shaul's letters. We really started at what, Mom? What was the first letter of his, like First Thessalonians or something like that? So we worked our way from First Thessalonians chronologically to First Corinthians. So we're right now at chapter 7 of First Corinthians. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put my I already have the shared screen here, so let me just go to my sword here. And I think what I'll do here is I should have the Aramaic on here, so I'll do the Aramaic on my sword of First Corinthians chapter 7. I'll start us off. Our goal, really, if you who are willing, is if we have time tonight, is try to make our way to either chapter 9 or chapter 10. So, all right, here we go. So hopefully you guys can hear me. If not, let me know. All right. But concerning those things, I already knew there was going to be notifications popping up. Thank you, YouTube, for being annoying. But concerning those things of which you wrote to me, it is not too for a man not to touch a woman. Now, again, I know a lot of people are going to misunderstand what he's saying here. He's basically talking about his preference would be for men who are not married to stay as chaste if they're called to serve Yahuwah and be eunuchs, is what he's talking about. But because of whoredom, let a man take a wife and a woman take her husband. Let a man bestow to his wife the love that is owed in this way, also the woman to her husband. By the way, this concept is from Torah. Okay, this is the concept of, the duties of a woman and a husband to one another, what they're owed as far as intimacy. And you can find that, I believe, in Deuteronomy 24, I think it is. A wife is not authorized over her body, but her husband is. In this way, also a man is not authorized over his body, but his wife is. So you see a common two-way street there. There, do not deprive one another, except when you both agree in a time when you devote to fasting and prayer, you shall again return to pleasure, lest Satan tempt you because of the desire of your body. So even Shaul is saying, like, you don't need to deprive one another of intimacy forever. I say this as to the weak, not by commandment. So he's saying this is what he believes. It's not a have to. For I will that all people might be like I am in purity, but every person is given a gift from Yahuwah, and one in this way and one in that way. But I say to those who do not have a wife and to widows that it benefits them if they should remain as I am. But if they do not endure, let them marry. It is beneficial for them to take a wife rather than to burn with lust. Okay. But those who have wives, I command, not I, but Yahuwah, a wife should not depart from her husband. Again, this is like the concept of running away from her husband, either because they got in a fight or because, whatever, not wanting to submit to her husband and run away. That's the context of this. It's not saying that a wife could never actually divorce her husband or whatever. I know some people take it that way. That's not what it means. And if she does depart, let her remain without a husband, or let her be reconciled to her husband. Let not a man forsake his wife. But to others I am saying, not my master, if there is a brother who has a wife who's an unbeliever and she is willing to stay with him, let him not leave her. Now, the key phrase is that she's willing to stay. Okay. Whichever wife has a husband who is not a believer and he is willing to stay with her, let her not leave her husband. Again, So you're not being forced to, it's willing. Okay. Um, that a man who is an unbeliever is set apart by the wife who believes, and that woman who is not a believer is set apart by the husband who believes. Otherwise, their children are defiled, but now they are pure. Now, I'm going to put my own 2 cents here in the context of this. He's not talking about like going out and trying to find a spouse that's a non-believer. That's not what Paul's talking about. Paul's talking about that if you were already married and unequally yoked because you came to Messiah. That's what he's talking about in context. So basically, it would be the husband and wife were originally both non-believers. The one comes to Messiah while he's still married to that same partner. So anyway, but if he who does not believe separates, let him separate. A brother or sister is not in bondage in such cases. Yahuwah has called us to peace. Yeah, I find people, they love to ignore that verse. They take the prior 4 verses there and they literally, it's almost like they omit verse 15 there. So there is an option to leave the non-believing husband or wife, okay? You're not forced to have to stay with them, okay? What do you know, woman, if you will save your husband, or you, man, if you will save your wife? But as Yahuwah distributes to each man, however Yahuwah calls him, let each man walk. And so I command all the assemblies. And if a man was called when circumcised, let him not return to uncircumcision. And if he was called in uncircumcision, let him not be circumcised. Now, again, this is a confusing verse. Is Paul saying that Gentiles should never be circumcised? No, because then Paul would be going against the covenant of Abraham. Okay, Paul would not have that authority to do that. Paul most likely, and this is where it gets confusing, from what I've learned from the research I've done and other people in this walk have done, sometimes when it talks about the circumcision, it can be talking about a party, or it can be talking about.
That's what it says here in the Aramaic.
Yeah, so this is where it's good to look at both the Syriac and the Aramaic Peshitas when they're explaining Paul's letters, because sometimes Paul's letters are not clear in the Greek. So you're saying yours, Mom, the Etheridge.
In verse 18, it says, if a man were circumcised when he was called, let him not adhere to the party of uncircumcision.
Yeah, makes a lot more sense. Yeah. So what you guys have to understand is in the first century, you had the circumcision party that preached a false good news and a false salvation, works-based salvation, that you had to be physically circumcised and keep the law as a new believer, all the commandments of the law all at once, and be physically circumcised to be saved. That's what the circumcision party was. You had to keep all 600 laws without fault, never failing, and be physically circumcised in addition to Messiah's sacrifice to be saved. That was the false circumcision good news that Paul was coming against. For circumcision is not anything, neither uncircumcision, but the keeping of the commands of Yahuwah. And again, we go back to the context of the previous verse. What is he talking about? The circumcision is nothing. He's most likely talking about the circumcision party. So he's saying keeping of the commandments of Yahuwah is what matters, right? Well, one of his commandments is getting physically circumcised. So he can't be talking about physical circumcision. He has to be talking about the circumcision good news. And he's saying that it benefits no one because you're trying to save yourself. Okay, you're in your outer works, you're trying to save yourself rather than rely on Messiah's blood and his sacrifice. Let every person continue in the calling which he was called. If you have been called as a servant, let it not concern you. But if you can be freed, choose for yourself to do service. For whosoever is called as a servant is Alua's freeman in our master. So also whoever is called as a free man. I'm just getting a little bit of static here. We might have to get rid of some background noise here. So let me just figure this out here. Trying to see where the background is coming from. It might be from Sally's or Dennis's. So let me see here. All right. So sorry about that, guys. We're at verse 20 here. So again, it says, let every person continue in the calling which he was called. If you've been called as a servant, let it not concern you. But if you can be freed, choose for yourself to do service. Okay. For whoever is called as a servant is Yahuwah's free man and our master. So also whoever is called as a free man is a servant of the Messiah. You have been bought with a price. You should not be servants of people. Now, is Paul saying you can't serve human bosses? No, what he's saying is, I think what he's talking about is actually human slavery.
Yeah. Mine says slave.
In
here instead of servant. It says slave.
So this is talking about like back then. You got to understand there. Hebrews bought slaves. Pagans bought Hebrews as slaves, vice versa. So that's what you got to understand from that context. When you know the Torah really well about those commands in the Torah, it makes sense what Paul's talking about here. Let every person continue with Yahuwah in that which he is called brothers. Concerning virginity, I do not have a commandment from Yahuwah, but I give my advice as a man who has received favor from Yahuwah to be trustworthy. And I think that this is fair because of the distress of the time, that it is useful for a man to be so. Are you bound with a wife? Do not seek a divorce. Are you divorced from a wife? Do not seek a wife. Now, again, this is not a commandment. It's important to understand the context in verse 25. He says, I do not have a commandment from Yahuwah, but I give my advice. It's not a commandment from Yahuwah. It's advice from a mortal man, okay? So Paul is not beyond reproach, okay? He's a man. He's a mortal man. So he's giving you his opinion in those verses, okay? I'm not saying that because I know certain, like especially in the Christian church, they would take those verses and say, see, if you're divorced, you can't marry again. You got to stay divorced. No.
Because they don't read it right. They're not.
Are you bound with a wife? Do not seek a divorce. Are you divorced from a wife? Do not seek a wife. Again, read verse 25 to get the context of that. And if you take a wife, you will not have sinned. And if a man shall keep a virgin, she will not be sinning. But there has been physical suffering for those who are so. And I have pity for you. And I say this, brothers, the time is now short, for those who have wives shall be as if they were without them. So I think Paul here, he probably believed that the coming of Messiah was going to be in his lifetime. So that's why he's speaking like that. He thought the resurrection, in his flesh, he thought that the resurrection was going to happen in, 70 AD or whatever. So, anyway, so, and those who use this world not apart from the right usage, for the form of this world is passing away. I have a little asterisk next to form. It might say a little bit different in the Greek. There might be a different word than form of the world. Because of this, I want you to be without care, for whoever does not have a wife thinks upon what is of his master and how he may please his master. Whoever has a wife cares for what is of the world, how he may please his wife. But there is a distinction between a wife and a virgin. Interesting. She who has not ever had a husband thinks upon our master, that she may be set apart in her body and her spirit. Whoever has a husband thinks of the world, so that she may please her husband. Now, when Paul's talking about the world, he's not talking about the sinfulness of the world. See, this is why it's important to understand that, like, the world in general is not sinful when you talk about secular things. Okay, he's talking about like secular responsibilities that a husband has for a wife, that a wife has for a husband. He's not saying, think in a worldly, wicked way. So I don't want people misunderstanding what he's saying here. But I say this for your benefit, that I may cast a noose unto you, but that you would be trustworthy to your master in a beautiful way while you are not attending to the world. But if a man thinks he is disgraced by his virgin who is past her time and he has not given her to a man, it is fitting to give her as he chooses to do. He does not sin, she may be married. But he who truly determines in his mind is not pressured to pleasure and has power over his will, judging in this way in his heart to keep his virginity, he does well. So this is just talking about chastity here and Paul's opinion on chastity and all that. And therefore, who gives his virginity does well, and he whoever does not give his virgin girl does all the better. A wife is bound by the Torah to her husband. Now, he's talking about the Torah to her husband. He's not talking about the Torah like as a general thing. So he's specifically talking about the law of marriage. As long as he lives. But if her husband should fall asleep, she is free to be whomsoever she will, only in our master. And what I want to say here is a lot of people have this false doctrine out there that this is the only way you can remarry is if your husband dies, that you can't remarry if you get divorced and your husband's still alive. That's completely false. You can go to Jeremiah chapter 3. Yahuwah does not say that it was sin that Israel married another. You know what I'm saying? Because Yahuwah divorced Israel. They were free to marry another. That's not the sin of Israel. The sin of Israel was they were committing adultery and whoredom spiritually while being in covenant with Yahuwah. But as far as being free to marry another after you're divorced, after you're given a bill of divorcement, that was always lawful in the Torah. Paul cannot change the Torah. He does not have the right to change the Torah. So we must understand that. So what Paul's talking about, he's talking about as long as she's married to her husband, the only way she could be remarried, obviously without divorce, is if her husband died. She would be free to marry another. That's what he's saying. He's not saying that that's the only case that she can lawfully marry another person if her husband's dead. Because what happens if she doesn't have a husband? What happens if she becomes divorced? She's not forced to be divorced forever. I know a lot of people think that the scriptures teach that, but they don't. So anyway, verse 40, but she is baruch if she remains in this way according to my mind, but I think also that the spirit of Alua is in me. Now notice that, right? What does he say? He says right after verse 39, right? He says, but she is baruch if she remains in this way according to my mind. What does my mind mean? My opinion. Opinion.
Yep.
So verse 39, you cannot take a doctrine of itself when the next verse he's saying it's his opinion that she should only get married if her husband dies.
Yep.
And that she couldn't get remarried if he divorced her. So that's what you have to understand too. Verse 40, he's literally saying what he just previously said in the last verse was his opinion, not a commandment. Okay. So again, that's important to understand as well. So, all right. So we're at 1 Corinthians chapter 8. I'll let you go, Mom.
Sure. Okay. Now, as concerning sacrifices offered to idols, we know well that we all have knowledge. Knowledge makes for pride, but love enables, I think it says enables to the light. But love ennobles, and if any man thinks that of himself, he knows anything. He knows nothing yet as he ought to know it. But if any man loves Yahuwah, the same is known of him. As concerning the eating of the food offered to idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world, and that there is no other Elohim but one. For though there are those that are called mighty ones, whether in heaven or earth, just as there are many mighty ones and many masters, to us there is one Elohim, the Father, from whom comes everything and by whom we live, and one Master, Yahushua Mashiach, by whom all things, and we by him. Howbeit, there is not in every man that knowledge, for some with conscience eat that which has been offered to idols as a sacrifice, and their conscience, being weak, is defiled. But meat does not bring us closer to Yahuwah, for neither, if we eat, are we the better, neither, if we do not eat, are we the worse. But be careful lest this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to the weak. For if anyone should see you who has knowledge at table in the temple of idols, shall not the conscience of him who is weak encourage him to eat that which is sacrificed to idols? So the one who is weak and for whom Yahusha died will be lost through your indifference. And if you offer your brothers and so influence their weak conscience, you also, I meant to say, and if you offend your brothers and so influence their weak conscience, you also offend Messiah. Therefore, if meat causes my brother to stumble, I will eat no meat, so that I may not cause my brother to offend.
Mm.
That was from the last.
So it's interesting here. I got to add this to our future oneness study. I just saw something in my Aramaic here of the David Boucher translation, the original Aramaic New Testament in plain English. It says in verse 6, to us, ours is one Elua, the Father. For all things are from him, we are in him. Now, most of those that are anti-oneness people, they love the first part of this verse, but they don't read the rest of it. And the one, Yahuwah, Yahusha, the Messiah, for all things are by him, and we are also in his hand. So just because it says the one Elu is the Father does not exclude Yahusha. Okay, and I don't know how it reads in the Aramaic, in the Greek. I'm just curious to see how it would read in the Greek. It's probably not as clear, but Yahuwah is being called Yahusha there because it says the one Yahuwah, Yahusha, the Messiah. So the Father is being called the Son there in the Aramaic. Yeah, the Greek has changed it. The Greek adds a word in there to make it look like they're separate individuals. I'll show you what I mean, Mom. Even if you go to the ESV, let's just say, yet for us there's one Elohim, the Father, for whom all things and for whom we exist, and one Master, Yahushua the Messiah. Mm-hmm. So it makes Yahushua a second person.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
By adding the word "and" there, you make them separate.
Yeah.
It's very subtle. What people have to understand though is some of these manuscripts, especially the ones that the NIV are based in, and the ESV and the NLT, the New Testament of those modern translations that use the Greek New Testament, that manuscript family that's known as today the Westcott Hort text it was basically a combination of the Latin Vulgate, Sinaiticus. I think it was the Latin Vulgate, Sinaiticus, and possibly the Codex Vaticanus as well. But the problem is that these Westcott Hort guys, they revised the Sinaiticus so much that it was completely biased. And You can look this up for yourselves. There's blogs even out there that tell you that the Codex Sinaiticus that the NIV, ESV, and these modern translations are based on, it's almost unusable today because these guys, Westcott and Hort, did such a bastardization to these manuscripts. So when you have an ESV or NIV that you're reading from the New Testament, realize that they're based on a very corrupt Alexandrian New Testament manuscript. So that's the reason there's a huge difference between the Greek of the ESV and the Aramaic, because the Aramaic was not touched by Westcott and Hort.
Oh, okay.
So you got to understand that. So these Codex Sinaiticus, they're not even the original Codex Sinaiticus. They've been revised in 1881 by Westcott and Hort. So that's what the ESV is using. That's what the NIV is using. And mainly they used them because, Westcott and Hort were these scholars that supposedly knew the Greek language perfectly. Yet they changed verses like 1 Corinthians 8:6 to make it look like Yahushua's not the Father. Because they did not believe in the deity of Messiah. So you have to know a little bit about these guys. They were rumored to be occultists. They were supposedly Anglican pastors that did not believe in the oneness, did not believe in the deity of Messiah. They did not believe in a literal 6-day creation. They believed in evolution. So you got to understand that these are the guys revising the Vulgate and the Codex Sinaiticus, which is a problem. That's a huge issue. You okay, Mom?
Yeah, I'm okay. A little, not enough sleep, I'm getting.
Okay.
But
All right, so this will be the last chat. I think we'll do chapter 9 and that will be it. So chapter 8 pretty much was just to kind of expound here, was a lot about the sacrificing meat to idols, not eating meat sacrificed to idols. A lot of people take this to mean, well, you can do whatever. You can go to an idol's temple and eat things sacrificed to idols. I disagree. I believe what Paul is saying, that, let's say, right, what he's actually talking about, he's talking about conscience, right? So I'm going to give you an example. He does this a lot. He talks about stumbling blocks, right? Verse 9 in chapter 8, stumbling block, okay? What is the stumbling block he's talking about in chapter 8, verse 9? He's talking about if you eat meat in general in a temple of an idol, what is a new believer, Mom, gonna think? The message you're relaying is that you can eat meat sacrificed to idols. That's it's called basically guilty by appearance. Okay.
Right.
In Paul's letters in Thessalonians, even, he says, avoid even the appearance of wickedness. So what he's saying is, even if you're eating meat that's not sacrificed to an idol, but you're at a pagan temple, you're giving off the illusion. You're giving off the illusion.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying. And this can be echoed by Romans chapter 7. If I eat meat and make my brother stumble, I will never eat meat in front of him. Okay, this is all common sense, guys.
Yeah.
It's all common sense. So a lot of people take 1 Corinthians 8 to mean that, I can go to a Chinese buffet that I know there's stuff being given to Buddha and eat the stuff that's been given to Buddha. No, it's not telling you that. No, it's not. So anyway, let's see here. Brother Dennis, could you possibly read, let me see here. I might have to ask you to unmute yourself. Let me just see here. Let me just go back to the app here. I got too many windows open here. Okay. Let's get rid of some of these apps here. Okay. All right. And I got a lot of apps open. All right. So let me see here. Let me go to the participants and see here. I might need to ask Brother Dennis to unmute himself. Let's see here. Oh no, you're still unmuted the whole time, bro. Okay. All right, Brother Dennis, could you possibly finish this off and read chapter 9 of 1 Corinthians?
Oh, let me see. Oh. Mhm.
We're all.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah, perfect.
Okay. All right. None. Am I not an emissary? Am I not free? Have I not seen Yahushua HaMashiach, our master? Are you not my work in the master? If to others I am not an emissary, I certainly am to you, for you are the seal of my office of the emissary in the master. My defense to those who examine me is this: do we not have a right to eat and drink? Do we not have a right to take along a sister, a wife, as do also the other emissaries and the brothers of the master and Kepha? Or do only Barnabas and I have no right to refrain from working? Who serves as a soldier at his own expense? Who plants a vineyard and does not eat of its fruit? Or who shepherds a flock and does not feed on the milk of the flock? Do I say this as a man, or does not the Torah say the same too? For it has been written in the Torah of Moshe, you shall not muzzle an ox while it treads out the grain. Is it about ox and Alim is concerned? Or does he say it because of us all? For this was written because of us, and he who plows should plow in expectation, and the thresher in expectation of sharing. If if we have sown spiritual seed among you, it is too much if we reap material goods from you. If others share authority over you, should not rather we? But we have not used this authority, but we put up with all, lest we hinder the Sorah of Mashiach. Do you not know that those serving set apart place eat from the set apart place, and those attending at the altar have their share of the offerings of the altar? So also the Master instituted that those announcing the Besorah, good news, should live from the good news. But I have used none of these, nor have I written this, that it should be done so to me. For it would be better for me to die than that anyone should make my boasting empty. For if I bring the Besorah, good news, it is no boasting for me. For necessity is laid on me, and it is woe to me if I do not bring the good news. For if I do this voluntarily, I have a reward. But if not voluntarily, I am entrusted with the management. What then is my reward? That in bringing the Besorah, good news, I should offer the good news of Mashiach without cost, so as not to abuse my authority in the good news. For though I am free for all, I made myself a servant to all, in order to win more. And to the Yehudim I became as a Yehudite, that I might win Yehudim. To those who are under Torah, as under Torah, so as to win those who are under Torah. To those without Torah, as without Torah, not being without Torah toward Yahuwah, but under Torah of Mashiach, so as to win those who are without Torah. To the weak I became as weak, so as to win the weak. To all men I have become all, so as to save some by all means. And I do this because of the Besorah, or good news, so as to become a fellow partaker with it. Do you not know that those who run in a race indeed all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way as to obtain it. And anyone who competes controls himself in every way. Now they do it to receive a corruptible crown, but we for an incorruptible crown. Therefore I run accordingly, not with uncertainty, lest I fight, not as one who beats the air, but I treat my body severely with discipline and make it my slave, so that when I have proclaimed to others, least I myself might be rejected. Quite a bit.
Yeah. I found something interesting there that I never saw before. So I don't know if this is supposing that or if he's just making a point, but it looked like perhaps maybe Peter brought his wife sometimes, and maybe some of the other apostles. Is that what he's saying in that one part? You know what I'm saying? Like he's saying, should I not eat or drink? And then he says, let me find this. This is my defense to those who sit in judgment on me. Don't we have the right to eat and drink? Don't we have the right to take a believing wife along with us, as do the other apostles and the master's brothers and Kepha? So, I mean, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying I never really saw that before. I probably glazed just right over it, but it kind of looks to me as though maybe some of their wives may have gone with them at times. I mean, we know Kepha had a wife. We know he had a wife and a family. We really don't know, I think we can assume that some of them probably did. I think Andrew, his brother, was probably about the same age. He may have, it's just that we're only told about Peter's wife.
Yeah. So,
but he's saying that there would be nothing wrong with that, is basically what he's saying there. A believing wife, he says,
Yeah. Who fights in a war?
I read it like 3 times over.
Well, I think a lot of us just overlook this whole concept from the Torah too. Is that do you go to war before cherishing your wife and all that? Verse 7, who fights in a war at his own expense, or who plants a vineyard and does not eat from its fruits, who herds a sheep and does not consume the milk of his flock. Basically, Paul's pulling from Deuteronomy there, and he's saying, you're supposed to be enjoying these fruits of your labors before you go to war.
Yeah.
Which is actually in Deuteronomy.
Yeah.
This is why it's important to know the Torah. You can't just jump into Paul's letters not knowing the front of the book. This is why I tell people that. I tell, not trying to talk down to people, but people that are freshly new in this Torah walk, that it's like their first year, second year. You probably shouldn't be jumping into Paul's letters yet. Because he's mentioning 2 or 3 different things from the Torah in one chapter here. He then goes on to talk about muzzling an ox while treading out the grain, and he's actually giving a spiritual application to it, where he allegorizes the ox as himself, or as the apostles, that they're worth their pay, they're worth their food. Where a lot of the times in ancient times, your pay was not like paper money. Your pay was food.
Yes, that's right.
Income in the land of Israel, even in the first century, you can look this up for yourself, it was food.
Yeah.
They paid taxes with fish. Okay. As far as paper money, that was not a thing back then. So that's, unfortunately, we tried to spiritualize what Paul is talking about, that a workman is worthy of his wages. He's not talking about paper money. He's not talking about you paying for the preacher to preach to you. That's not what Paul's talking about. Paul's talking about house to house ministering, staying with the people you preach to, and being fed by their food. That's your pay. And that's clearly what he's talking about in context. Because because it even says, if we have sown in you from the Spirit is a great thing, we shall reap of you from the body. If others have authority over you, is it not all the more fitting for us? But we have not used this authority, but we have endured all things. Basically, he's saying, I haven't bothered you guys. I could have bothered you guys and say, hey, can I stay with you guys for a night? I really need a meal, like, stuff like that. But he didn't want to bother them. Do you not know that those who labor in the temple are provided for the temple? Those who serve the altar share in the altar. But what is sharing in the altar? Again, you have to know the Torah. Sharing. Who shares in the altar? The Levites. What is their share? Food. Food, not money. Okay, so a Christian church would use this to try to get you to dig deep into your pockets and give them tithe money. No. Paul's talking about food as pay. He's using all these allegories to talk about food as pay, because the Levites' pay was the sacrifices, by the way. That was their portion. Okay,
that's right.
So when you understand that from the Torah, you'll see what Paul's actually talking about. In this way, also, our master commands that those who preach his Besorah, not a Besorah, the Aramaic actually says his Besorah, shall live from his Besorah. I like how it says his, because it makes it distinct and it makes it specific, like Yahusha's good news, Yahuwah's good news. But I have not been accustomed to any of these things, neither have I written this, that thus it should be done to me. For if it would be better for me to die than that someone would nullify my esteem. For also I have no pride as I preach the glad tidings, for necessity is laid upon me. But woe to me unless I shall preach the glad tidings. For if I do this with my pleasure, I have a reward. But if without my pleasure, I am entrusted with stewardship. So he's basically saying, even if I don't get a reward, it's my pleasure to do it, because this is my job. What therefore is my reward? When I preach, when I evangelize, I may make the glad tidings of the Messiah without expense. A lot of preachers need to read this today. Without expense. I do not use the authority that he gives to me in the glad tidings. So basically, Paul's saying, I don't distort it so I can get my pockets filled. That's what he's saying. For as I am free from all these things, I have subjected myself to every person that I may gain the many. And I was with the Judeans as a Judean, that I may gain the Judeans, and I was with those who are under the Torah, like those who are under the Torah, that I might gain those who are under the Torah. Now, again, this is not saying that we should go acting like Jewish people. Okay, that's not what he's saying. He met the Yahudim where they were. He met his Yahudim brother where they were. When he was preaching to them, he came to their level and he witnessed to them in a way that he could reach out to them. Basically, it's the concept, okay, when you preach to a heathen, you don't Bible bash them, okay, when you're witnessing to a heathen. Because the heathens are not going to know the Torah.
No.
Now, Paul's own brothers are going to know the Torah. So when he's preaching to the Judeans and the Benjamites, he's using the Torah. But he's not going to do the same thing when he's going to the Gentiles. That's all he's saying. It's the concept of you come to them where they are. Okay.
That's right.
So the Judeans' problem is that they have the Torah, but they don't understand the Torah points to Yahusha. So Paul's challenge there is to use their Torah to point to him, just like us today. If we witness to a Muslim person, we do the same thing. If we witness to a Jewish person, we do the same thing Paul did. It's that concept. But I've seen that in Christianity. They twist that verse and say, well, you got to act like you're obeying the law to get to them, and then, you can be yourself with the Gentiles. I've heard that type of interpretation. Like he was like a Jew to the Jews. That's the only reason he was keeping the Torah, yada, 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 and, all that. But anyway, and to those who do not have the Torah, I was as without Torah. While I am not without Torah to Yahuwah, Notice how he says, while I am not without Torah to Yahuwah, but in the law of the Messiah that I may win those who are without the Torah. Now, again, is the law of Messiah a different law? No, it's not. So I've seen in Christianity, they take this one verse and a couple other verses like in Galatians, that there's this like new law of Messiah and no more the law of Moses. Okay, first of all, you can't take a verse of itself and build a whole new doctrine, number one. Okay, what he's saying is, he says, while I am not without it, meaning I have it to Yahuwah, I'm indebted to Yahuwah to obey his Torah, but in the law of Messiah. So the law of Messiah here, I think, is actually being used as an alternative name for the law of Moses, not that it's a second law or a new law. Okay, so that's where people, take one isolated verse and try to build a whole new doctrine around it. Anyway, but so here we go. I was everything to every person. And again, context here, verse 22, I was everything to every person. So he knew his audience. That's what Paul's trying to.
That's right.
And verse 22 gives you the context. He knew his audience. He couldn't preach to every group in the same way. I've done this so that I might be a partaker of the glad tidings. Do you not know that those who run in the stadium are, so he's now giving sports analogies here.
Yeah.
All run, but there is one who takes the victory. Run in this way so that you may obtain. But every man who does competition restrains his mind from everything and run to receive a destructible crown. But we, what is indestructible? Now, the indestructible crown is actually the crown of life. A lot of people don't realize that. He's actually talking about the crown of life that Yahushua gives us. That's actually prepared for us in heaven. So salvation has not been given to us yet. We have to run the race. Like Paul all the time knew that it was a future event. We were not saved yet. He constantly talked about it. We're closer to the day of salvation than when we first believed. So Paul knew this. So, and you can find that, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in Romans 10:13 about or it might be Romans 14 actually. But it talks about how we're closer to the day of salvation than when we first believed and all that. I run therefore in this way, not as if it for something unknown, and so I contend not as one who fights the air, but I subdue my body and I enslave it, lest I who have preached to others would be disqualified by myself. And that's it. That's the end of our reading for tonight, I believe, because I think we're all getting a little tired here. It's getting a little late on the Eastern Standard Time part of the country here. So I just want to say thank you, all of our viewers and listeners, for tuning in. Like I always say, if you guys have any questions, I know you guys anyway will do it, post it on the comment section of the video here. And please, if you're new to our YouTube page, like, share, subscribe, click on the notification bell, because it will help you as much as it helps us. Because once you click on the notification bell, you'll be notified on any study we do in the future. So it's also helping you too, but it also helps us as well. So, and again, to all those that are already current subscribers and you're looking for live videos, you must, and I repeat this all the time, must go on the live tab. It is different now with YouTube with this update. You got to go to the live tab. You're not going to see these videos under just videos. Please, guys, look under the live tabs. So anyway, so thank you very much. And I just want to say a general announcement here. I wanted to advertise a little self-promotion of this YouTube page here. I just wanted to thank all of our Mishpach out there, all of our brothers and sisters who have subscribed to the YouTube page in the past couple of years. This was a very humble start of a YouTube page, started only about 3-4 years ago and praise Yahuwah, it's more than doubled the amount of subscribers already. So I just want to thank you guys for being loyal out there, for following this ministry here. I just want to thank you guys. And I just wanted to give another general announcement. We will be doing, Yahuwah willing, we will be doing another study about finding Yahushua in the Tanakh. This is kind of like a continuation. If you guys have not seen how to find Yahushua in the Tanakh, aka the Old Testament series we've done, please check that playlist out. I'll even link it to this video. But we're going to do a future study called Yahuwah Elohim, Yahuwah Aluwa equals the word of Yahuwah study, which we're going to be looking at different versions of the Torah, the Tanakh, that paraphrase wherever you see, like in your Bibles, Yahuwah Elohim, and it's a compound name. In the Targums, they understood that person, Yahuwah Elohim, sometimes it would just say Yahuwah, but then it would say Yahuwah Elohim. Wherever it would say Yahuwah Elohim, a lot of the times, the Targums would paraphrase it as the person, the word of Yahuwah. So we are going to be going into that to prove, to contend for the faith and prove why I believe this person, Yahuwah Elohim, in the Tanakh was Yahushua himself, pre-incarnate. So we're going to be going into that. So please stay tuned for that. And to all of our brothers and sisters out there, have a great rest of your Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. And see you guys next time, Yahuwah willing. All right. And that is it. Okay, stop the share.